My name is John Menzies. I am the head of marketing here at the Abbey DLD Group of Colleges. And today's webinar is going to be talking about the UK education system. So it's really designed to be a very basic introduction to British education for parents, for students who are maybe thinking and considering sending their child or coming to study here in the UK. And it's really a base level just to help you understand a little bit more about how education works here in the UK, but also some of the terminology and some of the questions you should probably be answering when you're considering schools, and also looking at kind of the next steps from schooling onto university and so forth. How does that work? It'll be about 20-30 minutes. We are recording the session, so we should be able to share the recording with you afterwards. So if you do cut out or anything like that, don't worry, we'll be able to share the recording. Please do ask questions. I've had some lovely questions before the session in the registration, but if you do have a question, there is a Q&A or a chat function, so you can post your question there. Just bear in mind that I will be a one-man band, so I might not be able to answer it immediately straight away in real time, but I'll do my best to either answer it in real time if those questions pop up in the chat or in the Q&A, or at the end of the session when we have time for a quick Q&A. Okay, excellent. So hopefully everyone can see what I'm sharing. My name is John, as I said, and we'll get started. So today's session, like I say, is going to cover the UK education system. We're going to talk about the stages and levels of UK education. We're going to talk about the kind of courses that you might want to consider studying depending on your age and what you're looking to achieve. We're going to talk about the experience for international students studying in British schools. So the different types of schools and kind of what the weekly term and weekly timetables and the termly kind of structure of the course might look like. So when you have holidays, things like that. We're going to talk about boarding, presuming that most students who come to study with us in the UK are going to be living in the school boarding. Obviously, some students do live independently, but we're going to be concentrating on the boarding experience. And then we're going to finish off just talking very briefly about the next steps from schools onto universities. So how does that process work for an international student, and how do schools or colleges support students to apply to university? One of the things I have got, which hopefully will work, I'm going to try it now, just to make things a little bit more interesting, is I've got a little poll, which I'm going to launch now. Hopefully you can see that. So hopefully you might have a little question pop up. This is just a chance to answer a question to make it a bit more interactive. Please feel free to answer that. So you can see the first question is, what age is education compulsory in the UK? If you hit your answer in that, it won't show to the wider group. It's just there to see kind of have a little quiz on some of the points we're making. So if you think you have an idea, the options are 14 years, 16 years, or 18 years. Okay, so it's UK education compulsory up to 14, 16, or 18 years old. And we'll see that the results of that are in a little while. Okay, so moving on. Before I get started on talking about the education system, obviously I'm a representative of the Abbey DLD Group of Colleges. So I'm sure you know a little bit about us as you're here on this webinar, but we have 3 colleges. I'm here based in Cambridge today. So we have Abbey College Cambridge, DLD College London, and Abbey College Manchester. And we are a group of independent boarding and day schools for students from around the world, but also the UK, offering a wide range of courses. So do take a look, do ask questions if you have any questions about our schools. I won't go into too much detail at this point, but obviously I'm a representative, and the things that I talk about are going to be focused on kind of some of the provision that we offer within our schools. Okay, so the first part of the presentation is looking at the stages of education in the UK. So this is something that as a parent, as a student, you might start hearing about. And it's just about understanding the different stages of education that we have in the UK. The way I like to think about it, and the best way to think about it, is breaking it up into stages. So there are a few ways to talk about that. You can see at the top there, we talk about early years education from 3 to 5 years, primary education, then into secondary and tertiary education. You might also hear the term key stages. So key stage 1 and 2, which is we're going through the early years and primary education, and then into key stage 3 and 4 in the secondary education. You might also hear people refer to which year you're studying. For example, a student is coming into a year 10 course. So to give you a broad understanding, when we're talking about education years through 1 to 6, we're talking about the primary education stage. And as we talk through 7 to 11, we're talking about the secondary education, and then years 12 and 13 are tertiary education. Schooling in the UK. So those of you who've answered the question, thank you very much. So I think we have a winner for, or the most votes for 16 years. Education in the UK is actually compulsory up to 18 years in the UK. So the one person who put 18 years, you're correct. Well done. As a little bit of a caveat, before 2015, it was actually compulsory up to 16 years. So you're not 100% wrong if you put 16 years as well. But education in the UK is compulsory from ages 5 all the way up to 18 years. So that early primary education, all the way through secondary school, and then what we call tertiary education is where students can continue in kind of academic education, but they can also move into more vocational education. So that might be apprenticeships, training, vocational courses where they are learning a trade or a skill, which can be sponsored also by an employer. So students have to remain in some form of education up to the age of 18 here in the UK. Okay, I'm just going to end that poll. Thank you very much, guys, and share the results so you can see. Perfect. And what I will do as well, just while I've got the polls up, I will also just fire up the second one, which you can answer at your leisure. If I can find it. There we go. And you can see there, if you have a little look, it's just talking about the difference between certain types of schools. So feel free to have a go answering that. We will come to the answer later. Students in primary education is kind of based around the core subjects of mathematics or numeracy and literacy. So maths and English are going to be the core that students study when they're in those very early years. So they're the key kind of building blocks that we need for the rest of the academics. As they move through primary education, they will be exposed to a broader range of subjects like sciences, humanities, language subjects. There won't be any formal education, formal assessment at that stage, but they will be assessed informally against their progress, against expected kind of progress for that age group. As we move into secondary education between 11 and 16 years, the formal assessment that all students will take at the end of the secondary education or at the end of Key Stage 4 will be the GCSE assessment. So that might be a term that you've heard or you're hearing. That stands for the General Certificate of Secondary Education. So that is taken at the end of Key Stage 4 when students are 16 years old, or at the end of year 11. If you hear the terms 10 and 11, they're also often talking about the last 2 years of GCSE. Students will move then, if they want to continue in full-time academic education, most likely into the A-level program, which is tertiary education from 16 to 18 years. So advanced levels are the most common form of tertiary education leading into university here in the UK, but students do also take things like the International Baccalaureate, foundation programs, and BTECs as well. So these are all examples of tertiary education that students can assist. We're going to talk predominantly about A-levels or the foundation program here because these are the programs that we would use here, but you might also hear schools talking about International Baccalaureate. They are the same level as A-levels, the way to think about it, years 12 and 13. Okay, the other point just to make on the key stages when you're looking at schools, when you're hearing this language, schools in the UK, whether they are independent schools or state schools, they are assessed and they are inspected either by Ofsted, which is a government body that regulates schools, or the Independent Schools Inspectorate if they're an independent school. So it's really important when you're looking at a school, considering different options, do take a look at the latest inspection reports. These should be easily available on the Ofsted or the ISI Independent Schools Inspectorate website, or the school themselves should be displaying that inspection report over on their website, or they should be able to provide that for you. So do take a look at the latest reports. This is a good way of kind of looking at independent assessments of the school's performance against a number of factors assessed by experts. They are expert examiners who work in education, who are largely senior teaching staff who go in to inspect other schools. We have a number of inspectors within our schools who go into other schools and conduct these inspections themselves. So it is a good way of having that first look at schools' performance and having an impartial guide to that school environment. Okay, so we're just going to move slides. So going to talk about GCSEs predominantly. I'm going to not talk too much about primary education just because it's not something that we really cover here within our schools. Our students would start their educational journey in the secondary education space. So predominantly students will come to us to study the GCSE program, which again is between 11 and 16 years old. Most of our students will join us for year 10, but we do also have a year 9 entry point at Cambridge and London. So our Cambridge and London schools offer year 9, so students from 12 years old can come and study with us. But most students will join, most international students joining in the UK will join for the last 2 years of GCSE, which is years 10 and 11. GCSE programs by their nature are quite broad. There are compulsory subjects. Again, I talked about maths, science, maths and English, sorry. They are again compulsory subjects. Science is a compulsory subject. And then there will be a combination of elective and compulsory subjects from a broad range of subjects. Year 10 is generally when students will narrow down their choices that they study at GCSE with a view to being assessed within those subjects at the end of year 11. So predominantly students taking year 10 and 11 will take around 9 subjects. I've put between 5 and 10 there because some of our students do come on for a 1-year GCSE where they study 5 or 6 subjects, just because we don't have as much time to work with them across a broad range of subjects. But the idea of GCSE is that it is a broad range of subjects that students are studying to give them that broad education. But we do ask students to narrow down as they go through the program. If a student joined us for year 9, they would have an even broader range of subjects still. And you can see the different options there. GCSEs are assessed under, I've put a new system here, but realistically the system's been in place for a few years now, but I've still got it up there just because you still might not be 100% familiar with it. Basically, they're graded numerically from a grade of 1 being on the lower end of the scale to 9 being the absolute top grade. Okay, so 9 to 7 is equivalent to A star or A in the old money. So GCSEs now are graded on that numerical system, and you can see in the middle of the presentation there I've put a few stats in terms of our performance across the group of how we performed last year in terms of against those results. GCSEs are very important. It's a very good option for students coming into the UK, especially from overseas who may be learning in their second or third language. I had a question about what's the best course for students to integrate into the UK education system. My answer to that would be, it's not so much the course, it's about the time. The earlier you can get into the UK education system, familiarise yourself with the education system, improve your English, the better the ultimate results are going to be. And we see that within our own group of colleges. Students who have joined us early for, say, year 10 or even year 9, as they progress through the school, they tend to perform better in their ultimate A-level results. It also gives you more time just to settle into the school, settle into the environment, improve your English in a lower pressure environment. So you have a couple of years before the assessment takes place. Increasingly, UK universities are looking very closely at GCSE grades. They will always ask for a minimum of, say, 5 grades, say from 5 up to 9, which is 5 is considered to be a good pass. They will always ask for a minimum number. They will often ask for English. They will often ask for maths at a certain level. But they are looking increasingly closely at those GCSE grades, and they are expecting good passes, especially the more competitive universities in the UK. So having GCSEs, although universities will look at the equivalent in the home country, is a good advantage when you're looking to apply to a UK university, especially a more competitive UK university, because quite frankly, they understand the GCSE system, they understand the kind of results you're achieving and the work you've done. So they are more confident of letting students in who have strong GCSEs than those who don't. And we see this quite a lot with our Oxbridge candidates. Those who have GCSEs, those who have studied in the UK, tend to be an advantage when it comes to the ultimate application. So it is very important to have a strong set of GCSE results. Barring that, if you're not coming in for GCSE, it is also important to have a strong set of secondary education results in your country. And our admissions team can advise in terms of the right option for you. Okay, I'm just going to move the slides. Moving on from GCSE, so we talked about the key stages, the end of the secondary education, so year 11 or key stage 4. We're now moving into tertiary education. So for the majority of students who are studying tertiary education with us or in the UK, this means they are studying the A-level or the advanced level program. This is usually taken from 16 years up to 18 years, okay? But it can be taken a bit later. We accept students up to 17, 18, 19 years onto our program as well, and students can progress onto UK universities at any point after that. You might hear the terms year 12, year 13. These are the two education years of A-levels or IB or foundation. Or you may hear the term sixth form, just to confuse things a little bit further. When we talk about a sixth form or a sixth form college, we're talking about a college that predominantly specializes in these courses at this age and this level. Okay, so many students will complete their secondary education at one school and then move on to a sixth form college to do their A-levels or to do the IB. A-levels are the most common university access course, and they're the most widely recognized. So if you are applying to a wide range of universities, A-levels will give you that wider access, and they're accepted by all UK universities and also universities outside of the UK as well. So students applying to, say, the US or Australia can also make the application with the A-level, and it's a well understood program that will give you access to a wide range of universities. Within our within our colleges, students generally take 4 subjects when they start, but you can take a combination between 3 and 4 subjects. Universities will usually ask for 3 A-level subjects at a certain grade, but at those more competitive universities, students will often have 4 or 5 A-level grades as well. So it's about playing the game and about understanding where your aspirations lie, really, in terms of the number. But generally, most of our students are taking 4 A-level subjects, or they might drop down to 3. If we think strategically they can achieve a better grade with 3, it often gives them a better chance of going to those competitive universities. Unlike GCSEs, where there are compulsory subjects like maths, English, science, A-levels, there are no compulsory subjects. So you can choose from a wide range of subjects. And within our group of colleges, we have over 20 A-level subjects that students can consider. In humanities, sciences, mathematics, computer science, there are a wide range of subjects that you can choose from. And there are a wide range of examination boards as well. So I've listed some here in terms of AQA, OCR, Edexcel. A question that I often get asked from parents is, my son or daughter wants to apply to a particular university. Which exam board should they be studying? Should they be studying OCR for biology? Should they be studying Edexcel for business? The answer is universities don't discriminate. They are all based around a standardized, assessed set of content. So the content is the same. You can approach it in slightly different ways, but universities will not favor one exam board over another. A-levels are also a linear structure course. What I mean that, and you may hear the term linear A-levels, GCSE are also the same now. Essentially what that means is that students will be assessed at the end of the 2-year cycle. So year 12, year 13, you take all your exams for all the modules you've studied in year 12 and year 13 at the end of year 13. Okay, this was a change that was made a few years ago. Previously, students would take 1 year of A-levels. They would be assessed in what is called the AS levels halfway through, and then they would have another assessment at the end of 2 years. But that was removed a few years ago, essentially to make them more challenging. Does mean that universities have less data. So they used to use that AS level data to issue offers, but that's a change that's been made by the UK government in recent years. And they're graded alphabetically. So whereas the GCSEs, you had grades from 1 to 9, in A-levels, it's the more traditional A star, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so that's the kind of grades that you're going to need to be achieving. And you can see on the presentation, many of our students, nearly half of the students are achieving A star to A grades from last year. Well over half, nearly two-thirds are achieving A star to B, which would be considered strong A-level grades for the more competitive universities. Okay, just moving on. So I'm going to talk briefly about the other types of programs that you can take at sixth form level. It's predominantly the ones that are available within our college. Obviously, I talked about IB briefly, but that's not something we offer. The foundation program, which is a 1-year program, although it can be taken over longer durations if the student haven't got the entry requirements, but it's predominantly a 1-year program for slightly older students. So students might have studied university or started university in their home country, or they may have missed a year and want to kind of come back and maybe come into the British system. The foundation program is a good option. It's a modular program and it's pathway based. So rather than studying 3 A-level subjects, you might study a foundation in business or engineering or biomedical sciences or humanities. So it's much more focused, and obviously the scope of university course subject courses that you're going to be able to do is going to be a little bit narrower, because if you're studying a business degree, it's going to be predominantly business focused, and you're going to be moving on to business management, accounting, maybe economics at university. It's a modular course, so whereas the A-levels were a linear course, this is modular, and what that means is that essentially you will have 3 assessment points throughout that 1 year. So every term you'll be assessed, and those assessments will be taken, brought together, and you'll achieve an overall pathway average based on the results from those 3 tests. So this is good if you don't want everything relying on those final tests that you take at the end of a year or 2 years. So you get 3 assessment points throughout the year. So it lightens the load of assessment a little bit if you're not such a big fan of big assessments. Also, with our courses, for the first 2 assessments, so the first term and the second term, you can actually retake that assessment. So it gives you another chance to achieve a higher grade. So it's a good strategic opportunity for some students if they're a little bit older, if they like a slightly different assessment style. Traditionally, foundation programs don't give access to as wide range of UK universities as the A-level program, and it's still the case that if you're applying to, or if you're aiming to apply to an Oxbridge College, Oxford or Cambridge, or say Imperial or London School of Economics, foundations don't really work for that. But we are finding that a large number of the Russell Group universities, the higher ranked universities, do accept our foundation program. A lot of foundation programs will be attached to a particular university. So they'll offer progression to that university based on you achieving a certain score at an English level. We don't do that specifically. We negotiate with each university because we want to keep our students' options open. And we are finding that many of our students are going to top Russell Group university like Bristol, Warwick, Durham, University of Manchester. So that's something that we like to keep open. We have a very high standard. And you can see we have a wide range of subjects and pathways available through the foundation program. Also, places like our Manchester College allow students to mix different modules from different IFP pathways together to create a kind of bespoke program as well. And the final tertiary education level or sixth form level course we offer is the BTEC, which is the British Technology Education Council qualification. This is available at our London College at DLD. We have 2 different pathways. We have a business pathway and we have a creative digital media production pathway. And again, these are equivalent to A-levels. In some cases, you can mix some elements of the shorter BTECs with an A-level program, so you can combine them as well. So it gives you a bit of flexibility, but they are much more vocational. And when I say vocational, it means they are designed to deliver real-world practical experience in a particular career area. So if you like getting hands-on, if you want to learn about the practices that you'll be doing in the job, if you want to have that kind of more vocational, more work-based focus, this works really well. Again, it's another modular course as well, so you'll be assessed on a basis of assessments and coursework as well. So it's another option to consider if you're interested and you want to get much more hands-on with the course and have maybe some practical skills that you can use to kind of appeal to a particular employer in that field. Okay, so I've talked about kind of the different programs. We're going to talk briefly about the different types of schools. Now, I think this is a challenge. It's a challenge for British people understanding the different terminology we use and the different names for different schools. So you might hear the term public school, you might hear state school, you might hear an independent school, you might hear a private school referenced. What's the difference between them as well? I think the most important distinction to make when you are looking at schools as an international parent or an international student is the difference between state schools and independent or private schools. Okay, and the main differences are quite clear. If it's a state school, it is run by the UK government or maybe a religious body or a local charity or foundation, but it will be offering free education to local students, predominantly British students, and it is government funded. Okay, now state schools will not be open to the majority of international students unless they have, say, a refugee status or a special type of visa that permits them to study at state schools. So if you are looking at schools, state schools are probably not something you need to look at. So that's the first thing to think about. Now, that means we're looking at independent or private schools. Okay. How do you know if it's an independent or private schools? Well, the first clue is going to be, are there fees, tuition and boarding fees? If there are, if they're displayed on the website, if they're very clear, you're probably looking at an independent or private school. Okay, these are privately funded, privately managed. Okay, they can be boarding or day. So you can come for the day, or you can come as a boarder and live within the school, or maybe with a local family that's kind of assigned to the school. State schools can also be boarding schools as well, but they're predominantly day schools. So that's another thing to look for. Do they have a boarding provision? Now, independent or private schools can be open to international students, but not all are. So again, that's another thing to check. Most independent schools that have international students will have an international admissions section on their website, or you'll be able to speak to an educational agent or one of our advisors, and we'll be able to kind of advise as to what schools are right. Now, you might hear the term public school. For me, this is probably the most confusing thing. When you think of a public school in the UK, we think of probably that's a state school because it's a public school open to the public. But unfortunately, it's not. What a public school means is that it is an independent school as well. So a public school is not really a public school. You have to pay to get in. So it is more selective. But if you hear the term public school, just think of it as an independent or a private school. That's the language that's used much more nowadays. Public school tends to be a bit of an old phrase, the turn of phrase from a few years ago. So you don't hear it so much. You might hear the term a public schoolboy. That generally means someone who's been to an independent or a private school. So just to sort of give a bit of context on how this language works and how it's a little bit interchangeable, I've got down the bottom there a phrase which I've taken from a very famous independent school, one of the most famous in the UK, and this is kind of their welcome text. So a warm welcome to insert name college, an academically selective independent school with an ethos of quality, equity, excellence and service. So you can see the term college and school is kind of interchangeable. And that's obvious when you look at the Abbey DLD group. We are DLD College London, we are Abbey College Manchester, we're Abbey College Cambridge, but we are schools. We offer education from the ages of 12 or 13 years right the way up to 21 years. School traditionally in the UK would probably refer more to educational institutions that offer earlier stages of education, whereas college, sixth form college, would generally mean older students, but the terms are pretty much interchangeable. So don't get too lost within that language. Okay, so moving on slightly, just to talk about kind of the school year. So if you're an international student coming to the UK, or if you're a parent, you might want to know when the kind of term dates are. Most schools in the UK have a trimester sort of system, which means 3 terms in the academic year, which runs from September to July. Students will join usually in September for the autumn term, which will run through to mid-December when we have a Christmas break. There'll be a half term within that time. So generally speaking, you've got about 12 weeks with a half term in the middle after 6 weeks, which will be in mid-October for a week or 2 weeks, depending on the school. Students will come back in January for the spring term. That's the term we're in right now here in the UK. And that will run from January, usually up, well, it will run up until Easter, whenever that may be. And there'll again be a half term, usually around about February, mid-February. So we've actually got that coming up here at the moment. So half term is very soon. And then the final term after Easter, students will come back in April, mid to late April, and then that will run through usually to the end of June or early July, depending on the school. Okay, and that will be the summer term. And quite often, if you're a GCSE, obviously if you're a GCSE or an A-level student, that will be the exam term. So that will be when you're doing a lot of the preparation work to take your final exams if you're in year 11 or year 13 of those courses. Obviously for our foundation students, they'll have assessments in each of those 3 terms. So it's broken up a little bit. Generally speaking, UK schools will close during the summer holidays for about 7 or 8 weeks, like I say, from July through to September. And they'll also close at Christmas. So 2 or 3 week closure at Christmas. Okay, some schools will also have half-term closures, or what we call exeats. So if you hear the term exeat, what that means essentially is that the school will close. So that will often be either during half-term or at weekends. So some schools might have a certain amount of exeat weekends in a term. So that's important to, when you're looking at a school, ask those questions about when the school closes, when exeats may happen. We are primarily focused as a group on international students. So we do not have exeats, and we do not have closures during half terms, because we know that obviously if you're in the UK, you might live a long way away from home and you have a 1 week break. It's not ideal to have to go home or to find somewhere else to live for that week. So we will remain open as our schools during weekends and during half terms. Students can leave if they want, but they don't have to. So that's a good, important question. Just something to think about, to ask when you're doing that. And I did also forget my poll, which was about public schools. I didn't seem to have launched. We'll ignore that. But it was about what's the difference between a public school and a state school. Okay, so we'll move on and look at the kind of weekly timetable as well. So I've got a couple of examples here. One for GCSE, so one for the younger students, one for A-level, so an older student. And the third thing to note, you can probably tell on the left is the GCSE, on the right is the A-level student. The GCSE student is much busier. So there is a broader range of subjects. It's a pretty packed calendar. School day starts at around 9 o'clock and usually finishes at around about 4 o'clock. Again, all schools are slightly different. They might have slightly longer subject periods, but you'll have a pretty busy day as a GCSE student. You've got to pack in more subjects. You might have a split timetable over 2 weeks. It might just be a weekly timetable. There's things like tutor registration, so you'll check in with your personal tutor. Obviously, lunch as well is served. GCSE students will have compulsory sessions as well, things like PE, physical education, PSHE. They'll have study skills session, and you can see maybe on the Friday afternoon they'll also have like supervised homework sessions. Okay, so there's quite a lot of support built into the timetable, and additional classes that we're mandated by the government to deliver, things like physical education, and then the personal and health education that we deliver to young students. So all students in the UK will receive those sessions. A-level, the idea is that as you become a little bit older, a little bit more independent, you'll have more direction over your own learning. So you'll have more free periods. Again, you're already taking 3 or 4 subjects, so you're going to have 3 periods. But the idea is the weight of work you're expected to do outside of your lessons, be that homework or self-directed study, will be much greater. Okay, so you'll have a heavier load of independent learning that you'll need to do. Again, you're 16, by the end of this, you're going to be 18. We need to prepare you to be ready to go on to university. But you'll see as well within our timetable, there are also things like tutor registrations. We'll also build in things like extracurricular activities into that as well, and PSHE and house activities. So students are in smaller groupings called houses, and there'll be many activities in there as well. So it gives you an idea of the kind of daily timetable and the weekly timetable. So think about starting at 9 o'clock. Obviously, if you're in a boarding school, you'll probably have your breakfast before within the school. You'll have your lunch in the school. After school day finishes at about 4 o'clock. And then after school, there'll be an evening meal served to the students as well. Okay, so just a quick word on boarding, because I think most international students are going to be looking at boarding options, living within the school, essentially. The key advantages and considerations, obviously, you're going to be living where you study or very close to where you study. Some colleges, like our colleges, will have off-campus and on-campus boarding houses. You might be looking, depending on the school, at whether you want a single room, so you want to live on your own bed in your own bedroom by yourself, or you might be sharing a room in a twin room, or you might even be in a dormitory with a number of other students. Obviously, there's other considerations and things to ask and might be important to you. Do you want to share a bathroom? Do you want to have your own bathroom? For our students, the majority have their own single ensuite rooms. But that's something definitely to consider. Or you might want to stop with a local family. Okay, this might be something that's advantageous for younger students. They get more exposure to British culture. They are living with a local family, understanding kind of how local families live. They have that kind of familial environment where they're sitting around the table having meals. Quite often, host families will have their own children, so there's that sibling kind of relationships that can develop as well. So that's another option that you might want to consider. All boarding schools, you should be looking for a really high level of pastoral care. So it should be secure. There should be live-in house parents whose job it is to support you, to provide medical care. In our boarding houses, we have medical staff within the boarding houses alongside within the wider school to support students. There should also be an extensive program of extracurricular activities, so clubs, things going on at weekends, which is organised by the staff there, and a house system as well. So systems where students will come together within houses, usually within peer groups. There'll be activities, but it also builds that sense of community, that sense of belonging. The other good thing about living in boarding is that this also means that we can, as an international student, especially if you're on campus or very close to campuses, there's quite a wide range of academic, extracurricular activities we can do as well. So we can do additional tutoring sessions, we can run evening lectures, we can provide English support, and we can go and visit local museums. In Cambridge here, for example, we go to the University of Cambridge usually once a week at least. London, there are many London museums, galleries and universities, likewise in Manchester, but also we might be going to the football. So there's quite a lot of extracurricular and academic and enrichment activities that can take place. So do ask these questions. Ask about the boarding program when you're looking at a school. Ask what the students get up to at weekends. Asking about curfews, what time can they go out if they're over 16? What time do they need to come back? How are those rules reinforced? These are really important things to think about and to understand when you're sending your child or when you're considering yourself coming to the UK. What kind of level of support will that school provide to you? What kind of environment is it? Do you want to environment where you're very close to the school? Do you want maybe a bit of independence, living slightly off campus? Do you want a little bit more independence in terms of the ability to go out weekends? So all important questions to ask to the schools to gauge the right level of education, the right level of boarding support for you. And I'm just looking at a couple of the Q&A questions. I will deal with those in a little while. So just also the final part, just moving on, is looking at university applications. So obviously, for most international students who come to the UK, my experience is they have a very clear goal in mind in terms of what they want to achieve, and that is a place at a very good university, often in the UK, but it might be in another English language speaking country like the US or Australia or Canada. So it's really important when you're looking at a school to understand the academics, the right course, to understand the environment that you're coming into. What kind of school is it? Is it an international school? Is it a British school? But also to understand how they're going to support you to achieve your goal. You may come in saying, I want to study at Oxford University, or I want to study at the London School of Economics, and I want to study this course. You may come in thinking, well, I'm not quite sure. I have some passion in this area. I might want to do this, but I'm not 100% sure. So you need to make sure that there's a school that can support you for both of those outcomes. So they can help you to apply to those really competitive universities and build up your skills and knowledge outside the curriculum. But also they can help you to make that decision. They can help you to understand the kind of undergraduate courses you might want to do at university, but also what that means when you actually go out into the world, when you've done your degree, when you go into the world of work. What's that career going to be like as well? So the top schools will have a really, really strong program of support around university application, careers, and that's something you should definitely be asking about. Just to give you a quick overview, there are many UK universities to choose from, over 160 in the UK. That's probably increased, who knows, since I wrote this. They are generally ranked by external organizations such as the Sunday Times, by the Guardian. There's an international ranking system called the QS University Ranking System. So you can look at rankings when determining which universities you might want to apply to. Obviously, generally speaking, the higher the ranking, the more competitive, the harder they're going to be to get into, the more prestigious they might be as well. The UK has a number of universities that are ranked in the global top 20 and the global top 50. So we have a really strong presence in that sense. But the important thing to think about rankings is they're all based on different measures. So it's not just how many students come out of the university with a particular grade. Whereas you can say we have this percentage of A-level A stars or this percentage of grade 9 as a school. For a university, they issue their own degrees and they mark them themselves. So the university rankings are based on a number of factors. And they may be factors like employability for students. They might be factors like how much research the university does and the quality of the research the university does, their international partnerships, and predominantly as well, student experience. So how happy are the students within the university system, and how do they feel about their university studies? So look at rankings, but also be aware that they are quite subjective. They do tend to change, and also drill down, look at the particular course you want to do, because what you'll often see is course focused rankings as well. So if I want to study business or architecture, how does my university rank? It may be at the top more broadly, but for a particular course, it might be a little bit lower down. So do have a look at the context of the subjects. And again, this is the kind of work that we will do with you in the school. Also grouping, so you may hear the Russell Group, you may hear terms like Oxbridge, G5. Universities will also organise themselves. The Russell Group tends to be considered to be the more elite, more competitive UK university. So if you're looking at a grouping and you want to aim for a high-ranking university, a good place to start is to look at the Russell Group website and to understand the kind of universities that are on there as well. But again, there are top universities outside of the Russell Group, places like St Andrews University or the University of Bath, which St Andrews in the last couple of years, not so this year, but has been the top ranked university in the country, is not part of the Russell Group. So again, have an open mind when you're looking at universities. The system for application is called UCAS, Universities and Colleges Admission Service. You can apply to 5 universities and offers are made based on predicted grades, personal statements, reference and other tests. So you will write a personal statement, you will have a set of predicted grades delivered by the college or school you're in. The school will also write you a reference. And you may have to do additional maths tests. You may have to write essays. If it's an art course, you might have to submit a portfolio. You may also have to sit an admissions interview as part of that application process. And then once offers are received, students will make firm and insurance choices. So you have a first choice, you have a second choice, and you'll have backup choices. So if you don't meet the grades required for your top choice, which is usually the most competitive university, the second university in place might make you an offer. International students will also need to sit an English language test as well, usually the IELTS test as part of their application. That's something they will do in the UK whilst they're at school. Again, our schools being internationally focused, we do a lot of English language support. That helps our students progress academically within the school, but also with a view to achieving the IELTS level that students will need for that UK university. Okay, so I'm just going to rush through because I know we've got a couple of questions which I want to deal with. And again, look at the school, the support, ask the question in terms of how do you support students to get to that first choice university? What are the measures you'll take? And I think when I think about international students, what I want to see is quite a systematic approach. Well, this is the programs we have in place and this is the steps. And I would also ask the question, especially if you're looking to come in for GCSE, what work will you be doing with my son or daughter, or what work will you be doing with me as a student when I'm in year 10? How will I start thinking about the subjects that I might want to study at university, but also at A-level, and how's that going to affect my university selection? If I want to be a doctor, do we have a specific preparation program in place? Do we have dedicated support staff who are experts in that university application program? Can you help me if I decide I want to apply to the US? Do you have expertise in that area? So these are all important questions to ask. And you can see the sorts of things you want to be looking for a school to provide: dedicated support with applications, help with the registration, a good, strong academic reference based upon evidence rather than just kind of, fluff. Personal statement support. So do they help you to draft personal statements? Do they help you to do that? Is there someone you can speak to, someone who will kind of go through it with you? Do they help you prepare for interviews? Do they help you prepare for additional tests? Do they understand what additional tests you need to do as part of that application? Will they help you to visit the universities? For us, we invite quite a lot of the universities into our schools. And that's a really good advantage for our students in that the universities will come to them. We have UCAS fairs, but we also have individual universities that visit us throughout the term. Are they helping us to provide work experience or practical experience? And are they building knowledge outside the classroom? How do we do that? Is it through the EPQ, the extended project that some schools do? Do you have a program to help me build my knowledge? If I want to be a lawyer, can you help me to develop some of the skills? Can you help me to understand about case law and about business law? What are you doing in that sense? So these are important questions to ask. Okay, so that's it. Sorry I rushed through the end there, but I wanted to, because I saw a few questions popping up and I'm a one-man band, so I will so I'll try and get through some of the questions, but do post some more here if you have them, and hopefully that was useful. So we've got a few questions really in terms of university application. So generally speaking, well, the first one is about kind of subjects that you need to take to study at LSE, to study IT, so information technology. So first and foremost, for LSE, you're probably going to need to study A-levels. So the foundation program won't be accepted. LSE is actually the top ranked UK university this year by the Times. So that's actually leapfrogged Cambridge and Oxford. in the rankings. I'm not sure the specifics of the IT course there, or if there is an IT course there, but generally for the IT programs, we do computer science A level, but the higher ranked universities, certainly from a Cambridge perspective, they want to see really strong maths, potentially physics as well. Computer science, if you've got the A level, is not going to hurt you, but generally they want to see those building block subjects. So I would suggest, from an LSE point of view, and I know this is definitely the case for the economics course there, they want to see really strong maths. So really they want a candidate who's got maths, further maths, probably A stars or A, definitely an A star in the maths A level, and then further mathematics, they'll want to see an A star or an A. And that's what you'll need to be competitive. Okay. So the foundation course cost. So I'm very happy to send a kind of list of the course costs for across the board. But again, if you want to study and live as a day student, that is possible. So obviously you wouldn't have to pay the boarding fees, but it depends on an assessment of your suitability to live with a relative. There are certain checks and balances if you want to live with a relative in the UK that you need to meet. So that's part of the application process. We're very happy to consider that. But again, it's something that we need to just consider. So the day course fee for next year for students, excluding VAT for DLD, I think is about £37,000. So to give you an idea, so that would be the full course fee for the foundation program. What is the top Russell Group university to study IT? Again, you can look on the rankings to find kind of the top ranked universities for computer science, or it might be information technology. I would say certainly universities like the University of Manchester, Oxford, Cambridge are very strong in areas like IT. Universities like Bristol tend to be very strong in those kind of more technical subjects as well. So maybe they're the ones to start looking at. But again, look at the university rankings, understand the individual courses. Quite a lot of universities in subjects like IT will offer sandwich courses. So you will study for 2 years and then go and do a year in industry, which can be very, very beneficial if you're looking to get into a field like IT. But certainly Manchester, Oxford and Cambridge will be very strong in that area. So what IELTS results are expected to enter the foundation course? So across the board, we do foundation in all 3 colleges. We ask for a minimum IELTS of 5.0 to come into the 1-year program. There is an option at Manchester to study longer terms where the IELTS is slightly lower, but it's 5.0 to come into the foundation program across the board. For A level, it's about 5.5, so slightly higher. Okay, just going to check to see if we have any more questions. I think that's all of them. I haven't had a chance too much to look at the chat, but I'll just take a check. I think we've got maybe the same questions. Okay. A-level and BTEC. Hopefully I explained the difference between the difference between A-level and BTEC. Do have a look on the DLD website if you want to find a bit more information about that. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen because I'm very much aware you're just staring at my presentation. Do have a look on the DLD website, but like I say, predominantly the BTEC course, obviously there's less scope in terms of the subject selection. It's business or it's digital media. And again, very more practically, more hands-on, more focused on the vocational aspects, so the work-based elements of it as well. It's also combines theoretical with the practical. The assessments are slightly different in that it's modular, and you'll be assessed more on kind of practical skills. Is it necessary to take the IELTS before entering DLD? No, you don't have to have, although we ask for an IELTS equivalent, you don't have to take the IELTS test. You could have studied English in a formal way in your country. You may have no English qualification. You can do a test as part of the application program process for us, which is free of charge, where we'll assess your English level, and then we can make you an offer based on that. Universities will ask you to take an IELTS test, but once you're in the school will help support you to take that test and prepare for it. How many students graduating from DLD entered Oxbridge last year? Across the board, we had, I think, 4 students go to Oxbridge last year, and over 30 students go to G5 universities, which is Oxford, Cambridge, LSE, Imperial, and UCL, University College London. How many students from Russia are studying right now? So a lot of questions here. I don't know the exact number, but we have a decent number of Russian students at each of our colleges. So, as I say, we have about 50 different nationalities, and Russians would make up one of the bigger nationalities within that. Top Russell Group universities study architecture. Again, I'm not an expert on particular courses, but certainly I think the most prestigious university for architecture in the UK would be UCL. Their architecture school is called the Bartlett School of Architecture. I know I've had a number of students progress there in recent years. It's highly competitive. So I would look at the Bartlett School of Architecture at UCL. And I know that the University of Manchester also has a very strong architecture program as well, as I believe does the University of Bath. Okay, just going to check. I think I might have had one more question. Lots of questions flying in. Okay, so we've had one question about what the best subjects for A-level students if they wish to study art and design in university. Well, obviously, we do an art and design fine art program at a number of our colleges. There are also subjects which are art related, so textiles, photography, graphic design, or graphic communication. So I'd say those are the key subjects. I think the most important thing, obviously, is to have a good foundation in art. The more competitive university, they'll want to see evidence that you've studied art throughout your GCSE or your secondary education. They'll want to see a portfolio as well. So the A level or the GCSE qualifications are very important, but also they'll want to see that kind of evidence of artistic thinking, of your creative process, of your development as an artist throughout the time. But you can get in to art and design through art and design, and then there are a wide range of different courses that you can do from there. You can take art and design A level or an art foundation. You can study graphic design. You can study fashion. You can study interior design. Even architecture would all lead in from there. Okay. Thank you everyone for your questions. If you do have any questions, we will be in touch afterwards. Do contact our admissions team around the world. I'm very happy. I'll share the link to where you can find those guys. They will also probably be in touch with you. So do feel free to pop us any questions that you think of. Hopefully this was a useful little introduction to the UK education system, and we hope to see you in the UK very soon.